Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, I have a personal question about this. Does mental health comes with family upbringing? Like, say, I have a mental illness. Let's assume I have a mental illness. Can I associate it to my upbringing? Like, people will say that because you weren't brought up properly, so you had mental health, or because your father wasn't present, so you grew up having challenges with your mental health. Is that so?
Well, there can be different reasons why someone presents with a mental health problem. So it could be that, I mean, in terms of obviously the example that you've given, yes, it can be. If someone obviously has a difficult upbringing, it could be that that then impacts on them and affects them in the way, as you've just said, where the person might present with some mental health problems. So, for example, if they grew up in a single parent household where they obviously didn't have a mother or father, or whether they had history, there's a family history of someone with mental health problems. So all these factors. So we know that I mean, what you've asked is really interesting because we talk about the environment and the gene. So we know that a person genetically can be linked or can be more vulnerable to develop some mental health problems.
Oh.
And so there's certain conditions that are higher in certain ethnic groups. So we know that sometimes if people, for example, with schizophrenia, people with lower socioeconomic and Afro-Caribbean could be at a higher risk of developing these conditions. And then we know as a result, as you were just saying about the environment, if something has happened. So we know that the interaction between a gene, so a person's genetic component, and the environment and their upbringing can also impact on them and affect them in a way that they can develop and have mental illness. So it's really important what you've just highlighted because the environment can place a lot of stress on a person. As you know, for example, if someone's growing up in a childhood or an environment where they are faced with a lot of challenges, and if they don't have enough coping skills or they're not able to cope with the day-to-day stresses, it can affect them in the long run where they can then develop some mental health conditions. Or they might, for example, as you said, if you're in a environment, for example, if you are in an environment where you are watching someone being abused or someone being assaulted or growing around violence, which is sometimes happens in some communities and some families. And as a result of that, you can experience PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder. So there's so many different conditions in which people can still present with obviously mental health problems. And I think what I want to say is, you were asking about the different conditions and in especially in minority in ethnic minority groups, and specifically we're looking at Afro-Caribbean. I think we do see that from the research that's been done, there's a lot of studies, for example, with schizophrenia. They've done studies on Camberwell studies. We've got other studies, specifically looking at depression and bipolar and looking at substance misuse, PTSD. So I would say in the Afro-Caribbean population, you can get all the conditions that you can get in other populations, you can get as well in the ethnic minority groups. And I would say that people in these groups are definitely, myself included, coming from a BAME community, we are definitely at a higher risk of developing these conditions.
Wow. Wow. So,
Recording stopped.
Motion.